Two very good things and one not very good thing in Rams' week number 2 win against the Atlanta Falcons. That's next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Not only do I host the Locked On Rams podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, but I am also the host of the Rams pre, half, and post-game show on their flagship station, ESPN 710. Just finished that up about an hour or so ago, so we are fresh off the win against the Atlanta Falcons, which we will get into coming up in just a little bit. I want to talk about what went wrong towards the end of that game. Thankfully, they won, and this is an opportunity to learn some lessons, and then a couple of things that certainly went right as well, and they got back on the right side of things along the way. But first, let me remind you that today's episode of Locked On Rams is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Rams. Click that little plus, the little check mark, the bookmark, whatever it is in your podcast feed. That way you get it in your inbox every single day. Plus, of course, check us out, Locked On Rams on YouTube. And speaking of which, just a quick little shout out to all the good people that stopped me both inside SoFi Stadium and then afterwards at our postgame show that came by and said that they watch it on YouTube. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm talking about you, Kerry. Appreciate you coming over. Classic Eric Dickerson jersey. Took a little selfie together. So thanks to everybody that checks us out, whether it's the audio component or the YouTube portion as well. We appreciate it a great deal. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's get into the number one thing that I think was vitally important to what the Rams got done today. And this is, again, a very good example of why you need to subscribe to Locked On Rams, because we're not going to be able to get to all of the wonderful things that took place at SoFi Stadium, but we're going to kind of go through these in order of importance. I want to start with Allen Robinson. I want to start with him because, you know, you go back to a week ago, and you could have taken your pick on the things that did not go well, whether it's Jalen Ramsey having a bad day, the offensive line had a bad day, Matthew Stafford threw 3 interceptions, they didn't score in the second half. It was a collection of unfortunate events. And among those was Allen Robinson really not being a part of what the Rams did offensively. Off season, I was saying, look, this is a guy that's been playing with the Blake Bortles of the world. What happens when you give him Matthew Stafford? What happens when you give him Sean McVay? How do those two things come together for him? And after 1 week, it was, well, they didn't. It didn't happen at all. There was nothing in there to get excited about at all. And Sean McVay said this is something that they're going to be more intentional about moving forward. This was something that was going to be a point of emphasis for them in week number 2. And, you know, look, Sean McVay tends to tell you the truth in these situations, but he also is not going to telegraph exactly what it is that he's planning on doing in any given week. And what he did was he went out there and was very intentional in making sure that Allen Robinson got the ball. They threw him the ball a couple of times on the opening drive. First completed pass of the day. Who else? Allen Robinson. First touchdown of the day. Who else? Allen Robinson. Now, he finished the day. The numbers are fairly modest. 4 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown. 4 catches on 5 targets. But it's just what it meant. It's just how much different it looked from week 1 to week 2. All of a sudden, everything else that you're doing offensively becomes much easier to do if you have somebody in your offensive scheme that is doing something other than Cooper Kupp. And we saw it. The touchdown that they had, first touchdown for the Rams on the day, I mean, I could have made that throw. You could have made that throw. And I'm not taking anything away from Matthew Stafford. I'm just saying that's how wide open he was. The separation he gets at the point of attack is really something else. We hear about that all along, and this is something that he brings to the table. Well, we really didn't get to see it in the opener against the Bills, and we saw it right there. And you could tell he was fired up. you could tell that he was feeling a certain way about him and his team and his chances, because it just kind of brought everything together. Now, fast forward to later in the game, and they went at him again in the end zone, and they got him another touchdown. Now, the play was waved off because there was an injury timeout right before the Rams snapped the ball. But again, he was wide open in the end zone. They tried to throw him another one. He was open again. Matthew Stafford just missed the throw, not nearly as open as he was on the first one, but a really good example of what he brings to that offense that you really hadn't seen a lot. Because let's just go back over the last handful of years with Sean McVay, whether it was with Brandon Cooks or Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp, or a vast majority of the guys, Van Jefferson, Deshaun Jackson, like all of the guys that they've had go through there, they don't throw that fade into the corner. And that's what was so unbelievable about the touchdown that Cooper Kupp scored in the Super Bowl to ultimately end up winning the game for the Rams. Was it was a route that they really don't throw very often. They threw it a little bit more with Odell. Odell would catch it occasionally, but it really isn't part of Sean McVay's repertoire. And all of a sudden, we saw it a bunch today, and it was open a bunch today. We saw it during the joint practices with the Cincinnati Bengals during training camp, and it got to the point where, all right, let's just move on to something else, because we could just this is easy money. We can do this all day long. So getting a chance to see it in action, I think, was very, very positive. I think it gives Matthew Stafford some versatility. It allows him to kind of spread it around the field, because that third wide receiver really hasn't presented himself yet in the absence of Van Jefferson. So they're going to need that second guy, and Allen Robinson was certainly that second guy today. Plus, it allows you to do so many different things with Cooper Kupp. That Cooper Kupp is now a guy that, look, he's going to get open, he's going to get his, but we can't spend all day, all long making sure that Cooper Kupp is the guy that's not going to beat us. I got to worry about Allen Robinson beating you too. I understand that this is a very different level of competition that the Rams were playing against a week ago against the Buffalo Bills, but it's still a significant step forward for Allen Robinson, a nice win for the Rams. We'll get into some of the things that happened at the end of that game coming up in just a little bit. But all in all, a really good day for Allen Robinson, a very good day for the Los Angeles Rams, and certainly a positive step forward as we get a little bit closer to the beginning of week 3, when they'll take on the Arizona Cardinals. Had a fantastic win of their own. Terrible, terrible loss for the Raiders. A good win for the Arizona Cardinals. All right, so that's the first thing that went right for the Rams. What's the second thing that went right for them? That one was on the offensive side as well. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. So there's a lot of daily fantasy sites out there, right? But there's nothing quite like Prize Picks. Here's the best part about Prize Picks. You're not going up against a bunch of other people. You're not going up against a bunch of Vegas lines. You make your entries based on whether or not you think a certain player is going to match or exceed their Prize Picks projections or not. For instance, Cooper Kupp, is he going to get a half a touchdown? Yes or no, right? Tyreek Hill, catch more than 3.5 passes. Patrick Mahomes, go over 320 yards. You yes or no these things along the way. And if you get them right, you get paid at Prize Picks, right? It is easy to play. How often have you won on these other sites? Not nearly as much as you can do at Prize Picks. Here what it is: 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. Like I said, not competing against other people. It's just you against the projections available. That includes the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, which is about to start here in just a little bit, PGA, golf, you name it, it's out there. Prize Picks has you covered. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is just that easy. And of course, it's safe and fast to withdraw your money. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. And if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks is going to give you $50. Don't forget that enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Click that subscribe button in your podcast feed, and also go ahead and check us out on Locked On Rams on YouTube as well. So when is a statistical game that means, that is not particularly impressive, mean a whole bunch? I think we can talk about what Cam Akers was able to do for the Rams today, right? If you just look at the box score, if you just look at the end of the line, he had 15 carries for 44 yards. That's less than 3 yards a carry, 2.9 yards per carry. His longest run of the day was only 8 yards. You go down to the receiving portion, he only caught a couple of passes for 18 yards. The long was 10 yards. So there was not any sort of big pop play from Cam Akers that makes you think, oh, okay, he bounced back and was the player that fantasy owners were hoping for, Rams fans were hoping for. That wasn't it. I still thought it was an incredible turn of events for what he was able to do this week relative to a week ago. Keep in mind, when they played Buffalo in week 1, he had 0 yards on the ground. He had 0 yards through the air. He had a grand total of 12 snaps for the Rams, okay? Touched the ball 3 times, gained 0 yards. And Sean McVay, shortly after the game and shortly after, the week had started again, was saying things like, Cam Akers needs to take advantage of the opportunities that he is given. He needs to maximize his opportunities. Saying things that, if you know what coaches mean when they say, talking euphemisms like that, which was, dude wasn't ready to go. Dude was not prepared to play in that game. And I'm not putting somebody out there who's not prepared to play. And if he's not prepared to play next time, I'm not playing him next time either. It was a very clear message. So let's go back to last week, middle of the week practice, right? And Cam Akers was, the responses, quite frankly, I didn't love them. The responses were, well, I mean, if that's what coach thinks we need to do, then I guess that's what I need to do. I don't know how many of you guys are parents out there. I would imagine a decent percentage of you. I am. And think of the difference between when your kid does something that you don't like and you're trying to correct that behavior, or you're trying to get them to do the chores, the assignments that you've put on them. And you say, listen, you're not carrying your weight. You're not doing what you need to do. And the response can differ between, you know what, you're right, I didn't, and I'm going to do better and it won't happen again. What's the response as a parent or a cook? All right, let's move on. Let's get ready to go again. Or, well, I guess if you didn't think it was good enough, then I guess, well, I mean, if you don't think it's good enough, I guess it's not good enough. That's kind of what Cam Akers was going with. That's not how he played. He went out there, he hit holes hard, he ran hard, he was very aggressive. He got the lion's share of the touches. When you look at this, Darrell Henderson played as well. He got 10 carries, 47 yards along the way. He did not catch a pass along the way, but you could tell that Cam Akers kind of got his spot back. Cam Akers went from a guy that was nowhere. Cam Akers went from a guy where they're pulling guys off the street to try and make an impact, to guys that are, okay, I think that at least for a week, we can go back. Now, the next step is to go from, hey, he played and played reasonably well, to let's go back to being that guy that we saw towards the second half of the season a couple of years ago, because that's really the last time we saw him at his best, right? You go back towards the end of the 2020 season, the season where the Rams beat Seattle in the wild card round of the playoffs up in Seattle, where Jared Goff had the bad thumb, where they ultimately go to Green Bay and lose because Aaron Donald isn't quite right. The second half of that season, and certainly through the postseason, the offense consisted of give it to Cam Akers, throw it to Cam Akers, let him carry the workload. And I think most Rams fans were incredibly bullish on him and thinking, okay, this could be the difference between them being a pretty good team and a very good team, because now all of a sudden you have a different offensive weapon. And I'm not putting him in this category, but just for point of reference, let's go back a few seasons before that when Todd Gurley was at his best. Of all the offenses football we've seen with this team, obviously towards the end of last season when Matthew Stafford was firing on all cylinders, it was very, very impressive. But I think what it's looked like at its best was when Todd Gurley was at the peak of his game, when Todd Gurley was making a run at a most valuable player award. So we know how good this offense can be when you get a back that's playing at a high level like that. And we really hadn't seen it until Akers kind of started to do it a couple of years ago. Well, fast forward to last season, he misses the entire year basically with that Achilles injury. He comes back at the very end, plays in the postseason. And, if we're adults here, we could say didn't play well, put the ball on the ground. And then comes into this season, kind of says, okay, he's healthy again. We're ready to go. It's been a year since the injury. Here, let's go. And then he can't even get on the field. It's like, what in the world is going on? And then tonight, or I should say, on Sunday afternoon at SoFi Stadium, he was the player you're looking for. Maybe not statistically, but certainly the guy that Sean McVay had a great deal of confidence in. And I think this is a great example of Sean McVay's leadership, of him just really understanding how to reach guys and just being a darn good coach along the way. This wasn't, I'm going to bury that guy, he's in my doghouse. This wasn't, I'm going to teach him a lesson, I'm not going to play him. This wasn't, I'm going to put him out there because he's my guy and I got to go with my guy. No, it was exactly what you would hope for. You're not ready, you're not going to play. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to get ready. I'm going to give you a chance to get ready. And if you do come in and you do play at a high level, I'm going to give it to you again. I'm not going to carry any grudges. This isn't going to be a bad deal where we go back and forth and, in the media or anything else. No, you're ready to go. I want you to succeed. I want to be able to help you help me, right? And he did. And all of a sudden that offense looked very, very different, just because you had a dynamic back there. And again, it's not a statistical thing. It's you have to play that straight up. I don't think it's a coincidence that he was a lot better on the day that Allen Robinson was a lot better, on the day that Tyler Higbee caught 7 passes, on a day where Cooper Kupp got into the end zone a couple of more times along the way. All of these things fit together. The offensive line was much better. That's something that I know for sure we're going to talk about on Locked On Rams, probably on the Tuesday edition of the show, because that was an incredibly impressive performance by them as well. But I think a lot of this starts because Cam Akers came ready to go. He looked like he's starting back in the NFL again a week after not being able to be on the field. So it was exactly the response that you were hoping for after seeing what he gave you last week. All right, so good on him. All right, so those are a couple of things that went really well to give the Rams the first win of the season. Some things that did not go particularly well that nearly took that win, which felt like, okay, they're going to win, they're going to cover, everything's good, too. Could they actually lose this game? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Let me tell you a little about Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. I've used Turo personally. My family and I, we took a trip out of state last summer, and we needed a big car. I have 3 kids. I'm married, and we took a couple other people along with us. So we need a big car. We need a big SUV. We use Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. So you can find whatever you want. Like I said, I'm on a vacation, and all the local hosts, no matter where you go, you're going to find somebody. Book an SUV for that road trip. That's what we did. A pickup truck. If you got to run some errands, you got to haul some things along the way. Maybe you're thinking about an electric vehicle. Turo is the way to go. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. So ditch those boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. How about a classic or luxury car, special event, a birthday, an anniversary, a holiday? You know how to do it. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and you just need to get to A to B. The point is, at Turo, they've got you covered with all of this. Ditch those boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. Okay, so those are the things that went right. Some of the things that did not. Let's start with this. The Rams got hit with the injury bug again. So a couple of different things happened here. Tremaine Ankrum, who was making his first ever NFL start today, was filling in at right guard for Coleman Shelton, who had to slide over to center because Brian Allen is going to miss some time. Tremaine Ankrum played 2 snaps, right? First snap, all good. Second snap, he goes down. The cart comes out. He's in a walking boot in the locker room after the game. Time will tell. But anytime that cart comes out, anytime that boot goes on, not really a whole bunch of good news. Now, the good news is Alaric Jackson came in and played really well. I mean, he did pick up a penalty at one point, but other than that, a very effective night for a guy that is really down your depth chart. So the Rams may have found something right there. So good on Jackson. But again, at a position that you are already thin. Joe Noteboom banged up, Brian Allen out, and now all of a sudden you've got the number 1 backup here. And again, Logan Bruss, their top draft pick, he's out for the season with a knee injury, and Tremaine Ankrum goes down right at the beginning of the game. So that is one more offensive lineman that is down. Wouldn't be surprised at all if the Rams start to look around and see what might else be out there, maybe activate some guys from the practice squad, because an area of emphasis already has gotten even thinner along the way. Moving on from that, Troy Hill gets hurt. You saw Riley Dixon get hurt, their punter. So a couple other guys that are going to be important parts of what it is that you're doing may or may not miss time moving forward. but certainly not a great injury day for the Rams on that front. Speaking of Riley Dixon, let's go to the special teams for the Rams for a minute. They only punted once today, which is good news. But the bad news is that during your one punt, it got blocked, it got picked up, it got returned for a touchdown, and turned what was, about 1 minute away from being a blowout where John Wolford is coming into the game into a one-score game that went down to the last play of the game. And it wasn't a bad snap, it wasn't a bad operation. It was just the whole thing was a disaster. I mean, they nearly took the ball right off of his foot. It wasn't that some guy lays out in front and gets his finger on it. No. It was just he barely had a chance to move his leg forward before the defender was there. That punt gets blocked. The Rams special teams last season, early through the first 8-10 weeks of the season, were not very good. So far, what we've seen through the early part of this season, again, just like I'm going to put Matt Gay in a separate category, not very good. We're not seeing a lot of return action. We're not seeing a ton of success in the punt game. So something to keep your eye on there because, look, this is the quickest way to lose a game is to make some big mistakes on special teams. Go back a few years ago when the Rams, man, they made a living on special teams, right? They were blocking PATs, they're blocking field goals, they're blocking punts. They had Johnny Hecker doing his thing. So this is obviously something that they need to use the terminology that Sean McVay likes so much. These are some things that you got to get cleaned up. These are some things that you can improve on moving forward. But that is something that cannot happen again, right? You can't have multiple blocked punts in a season. Hopefully, it's one of those. Okay, we figured out what's not working. You move on and you go from there. And then lastly, they turned the ball over again 3 times today. That is 5 interceptions for Matthew Stafford in the first 2 weeks of the season. That's about 4 too many. We talked about it last year, right? When Matthew Stafford throws 1 or fewer interceptions, they basically don't lose, right? If he throws more than 1, you're looking at a situation where it's a 50-50 shot and probably a little bit less than that. Now, one of the interceptions was when he was absolutely cooking. 12 out of 12 to start the game. They've had 2 drives. They've had 2 touchdown drives. They get it back. It's towards the end of the first half. They're pushing the ball down the field, and he's feeling it, right? He hasn't missed a pass. He tries to throw it in to what was a well-covered Tyler Higbee. That gets intercepted in the end zone. Not a good throw, not a good decision, certainly something that you're not looking for. The second interception in the second half was more of just a great defensive play. Those are the kinds say, okay, guy made a play. It's going to happen once in a while, but 5 interceptions through the first 2 weeks of the season, not nearly good enough moving forward. That's got to get cleaned up a lot. And we haven't said a lot of negative things about Cooper Kupp over the course of my tenure here at Locked On Rams because he doesn't do a lot of things that deserve a lot of criticism along the way. That's a tough place to put the ball on the ground. This is another fumble late in the game. The Rams are already a little bit on their heels at this point. They've already kind of lost whatever momentum they had in this game, and your best player, the guy coming off one of the greatest wide receiver seasons in history, gets that ball punched out. The same guy that knocked it out is the same guy that recovered it. It was an impressive defensive play, but I guarantee you that Cooper Kupp's thinking, that can't happen again. And it's odd. You go back a few years, as good as Cooper Kupp has been since he's gotten here, there are moments where every once in a while the ball comes out. I understand that it does happen, but you wouldn't think it would happen to him as much. And again, the Rams got away with it today. 3 more turnovers, 6 turnovers in the first 2 games. You're not going to turn it over 3 times a game and win very often. Thankfully, the Atlanta Falcons were the opponent today, and they were able to kind of dodge that bullet at the end by just basically letting the clock run out before anything super, super crazy happened. And it helped a lot that Marcus Mariota was on the other side of the field and not Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or one of those guys that they're going to have to play or already have played this season. Marcus Mariota is not that guy that puts a great deal of fear in you when he has to do something with his arm. Those other dudes, a little bit different. They're going to have to clean up the end of game stuff because that was not an impressive finish for the Rams. An impressive win? Yes. A much needed win? Yes. A clean way to end what was otherwise a very positive day at SoFi? Not so much. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rams. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson giving you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.